Hey, hi guys, I'm going to be going over absolute and comparative advantage. So this is my very first video. Please bear with me. I have no idea how to edit stuff, so if camera angles are wrong or anything like that, I do apologize for that right off the bat. So let's go ahead and get started. Whenever they give you a prompt, the very first thing you should do, the most important thing that you should do, is to determine whether the question is an input question or an output question. So if it's an output question, and just by the way, these are all the notes that I gave you guys in class, so if you have that with you, that's great. So if it's an output question, the number of resources to produce a good is the same for both. So I have an example here of Japan can make 3 cars per hour, Germany can make 12 cars per hour. So as you can see, the resource that they're using, the 1 hour, is the same for both countries. They're producing different amount of goods, different number of outputs, right? For an input question, different number of resources are used to produce a good. Example, it takes Japan 3 hours to make a car, and it takes Germany 12 hours to make a car. So you can see that the hours are different. Now, the hours are different for both versus up here where it was in 1 hour they could produce different number of goods. So keep that in mind. This is another little chart that I gave you guys in class. So if it was an output question, again, you're going to have to determine absolute advantage. So when you're looking at absolute advantage, you're looking at the original numbers that were given to you, and you're looking for the larger number. Who can produce the most product? For comparative advantage is after you do all your calculations, now you're looking for the smaller number. You're looking for the lower opportunity cost. Who gives up the least? In an input question, for absolute advantage, again, we're looking at the original numbers, and we're looking for who uses the fewest resources to create the products. You're looking for the smaller number. Who takes up the least amount of time to do something, if it's a time question. For comparative advantage, it's the same for both. It's after the calculations, and you're looking for the lowest opportunity cost. Who gives up the least? So let's go ahead and do a example here. So here we have Japan and Germany, and they can produce cars. And I put Japan up here. Sorry about that. It's supposed to be bikes. Number produced per day. So is this an input question? Is this an output question? What do you think? And remember that you can go ahead and pause the videos if you want to draw this out and try it out on your own. Go for it, and then just check to see if you did it correctly at the end. So number produced per day. So we're saying that Japan can produce 3 cars per day and Germany can produce 4 cars per day. So yes, this is an output question. So output. Okay, so first thing you need to do is determine who has absolute advantage. So for cars, if you go back to your chart, absolute advantage, look at the original numbers. The one that can produce the most, the larger number. So between Japan and Germany, Germany can produce more cars because they can produce 4, and Japan can only produce 3 in the 1 day. So Germany has absolute advantage. For bikes, Japan can produce 9 bikes per day, and Germany can produce 8 bikes per day. So Japan has absolute advantage. So now we're going to go ahead and calculate to determine comparative advantage. So I like to put up my ratios. Sorry if this is getting crooked. I like to put up my little ratios, or start it off. So for every 1 car, Japan is going to give up a certain amount of bikes, and then for every 1 car, Germany is going to give up a certain amount of bikes. I just like doing this because, I like to, I'm a weirdo like that. What do you want? What are you going to do? Okay. So, let's see. So again, we said this is an output question. So remember that output equals other goes over. Ooh, right? So we're going to be looking at Japan, the 3. So we're looking at Japan. Japan can make 3 cars or 9 bikes. So other goes over. And then we reduce. Divide by 3. Divide by 3 equals 3 over 1, which is equal to 3. And you can just plug in your number up top to the equation. Germany can make 4 cars. Other goes over. So we put the 8 up top. And reduce. Divided by 4. Divided by 4. So that equals 2. So for every 1 car, Germany gives up making 2 bikes. Move over to the bikes. So now we have, they can make 9 bikes or 3 cars. So other goes over. And we reduce to 1/3. So for every 1 bike, Japan gives up making 1/3 of a car. And then we have Germany again. The 8 other goes over, and we reduce to 1.5. So let's figure out who has comparative advantage. Remember, comparative advantage after calculating the one with the lowest opportunity cost or the smaller number. So Japan gives up 3 bikes while Germany gives up 2 bikes. So Germany gives up less. Their opportunity cost is lower. So Germany has comparative advantage. And for bikes, Japan gives up 1/3 of a car, and Germany gives up half of a car. So Japan has comparative advantage. And remember, I mean, I'm not like a super math person, and so if you're anything like me, you look at 1/2, 1/3, and you're just like it throws you for a loop. And then sometimes they'll give you like crazier numbers maybe, but they'll usually give you like a good, like this one you can obviously tell 3 is bigger than 2. So know that if one country has comparative advantage in cars, they cannot have comparative advantage in the other item. So you know that Japan had to have had comparative advantage. If you ever get where the one country has comparative advantage in both items, that means you made some kind of math mistake. So go back and check your work. Okay? So they're always going to ask you who should specialize in what. And whatever the particular country has comparative advantage in, that's what they should specialize, and they should just trade for the other item. So since Japan has comparative advantage in bikes, Japan should focus on making bikes and trade for the cars. And Germany is better at making cars, so they should focus on making cars and trade for the bikes. Okay? And why? They're always going to ask you to explain. Why should Germany focus on making cars? They should focus on making cars because they have a lower opportunity cost. Remember to always throw in your economic terminology. You all know these words. You've been studying this all semester long. So just throw them in there. Okay, let's do another practice. Okay, so very similar. Look at that. Japan and Germany, cars and bikes. This time, it's the number of hours to produce one product. So is this an input question or an output question? Yes, that's right. It's an input question because now we're saying that it takes Japan 3 hours to make one car and 9 hours to make one bike, and it takes Germany 4 hours to make one car and 8 hours to make one bike. So, yes, input. So let's get started. Again, we're going to be looking for the absolute advantage. So in an input question, looking at the original numbers, this time we're looking for the one that uses the fewest number of resources, the smaller number. Who takes the least amount of time to do it, to produce the product? So again, Japan, it takes them 3 hours. Germany, it takes them 4 hours. So Japan has absolute advantage in the production of cars. And in the production of bikes, Japan, it takes them 9 hours, and it takes Germany 8 hours. So Germany has an absolute advantage in the production of bikes. Okay? Oh, and just FYI, if the numbers are ever the same, like it was 9 and 9, then you could either put like neither of them have absolute or both of them have absolute, because it's the same number. So now let's do the comparative advantage. So remember, input equals other goes under. So IOU. That's how you remember it. So let's get started. Remember, I like to do the little ratios. That way it just makes it easier to just plug in numbers at the end. So for every one car, Japan gives up making a certain amount of bikes. And the same for Germany. And then Japan, for every one bike, they give up making a certain amount of cars. And the same for Germany. Okay, so we're looking at Japan and cars. So they make 3 other, because they could have made 9 bikes at the same time, goes under, reduce, so it equals 1/3. So for every one car, Japan gives up making 1/3 of a bike. And this is the one we're looking at, so other goes under, and we reduce to 1/2. Coming over here to the bikes, so for every, they make 9, other goes under, and reduce. So for every one bike, they give up making 3 cars, and then the 8, other goes under. So for every one bike, they give up making 2 cars. So if you remember, in an input question, comparative advantage, it's after the calculations, which one has the lowest opportunity cost. We're still the same as the output method. So the smaller number is what we're looking for. So looking at the numbers that we've calculated, 1/3 is smaller than 1/2. So Japan has comparative advantage in the production of cars. And on this side, the 2 is smaller than the 3. Germany gives up less, so they have comparative advantage in bikes because they have a lower opportunity cost in the production of bikes. So who should specialize in what? Japan should specialize in the production of cars and trade for the bikes, and Germany has a comparative advantage, so they should focus on making bikes and trade for the cars. Why? Because they have a lower opportunity cost. Okay. All right, guys. I made another little example if you guys want to try it out on your own. And remember to hit pause, try it out, determine whether it's an input or an output question. Okay, so it says number produced per hour. So we're looking at China and Brazil, laptops and phones. Number per hour, since it's per hour, it's the same for both. We know that this is an output question. So again, let's look at who has absolute advantage. Sorry. Absolute and output, we're looking at the original numbers, the one that can produce the most, the larger number. So obviously China can make far more laptops than Brazil, so China has absolute advantage in the production of laptops. And phones, China can produce 12 and Brazil can produce 5, so again China has absolute advantage in phones. Remember, absolute advantage, yes, one country can have absolute advantage in both items, but they cannot have comparative advantage in both items, okay? So again, output, other goes over. So we're looking at the 4, the other, which is the 12, goes on top, so 12 over 4. We reduce by 4. Whoops, that's supposed to be a 1. Sorry, y'all. Divide by 4. Divide by 4 gives us 3. 3 over 1, so that's 3. So for every, and I forgot to do the, for every one laptop, they give up 3 phones. For every one laptop, they give up phones. For every one phone. It's just my way, guys. I like to do it like that. Do it your way. So let's go with Brazil. Other goes over, so the 5 over the 1, which equals to 5, so that was easy. And moving over to the phones, other goes over, so we have the 4 on top of the 12, divide by 4, which equals 1, divide by 4 equals 3, so that's 1/3. And then other goes over, so 1 over 5. That's 1 over 5. Okay, so for comparative advantage in laptops, again, we're looking at after the calculations, the one with the lowest opportunity cost, the smaller number. So 3 is smaller than 5. So China has comparative advantage in laptops because they have a lower opportunity cost. Moving over to this side, 1/5 is smaller than 1/3. And again, if you're not math like me, but you already did this one, you already know that this is definitely smaller than that one. You know that Brazil has to have comparative advantage. So they have comparative advantage. Who should focus on producing laptops? Then that is China, because they have a comparative advantage because their opportunity cost is lower than Brazil's. In the production of cell phones, Brazil has comparative advantage. They have a lower opportunity cost, and so it's more advantageous for them to produce the phones and trade for the laptops. All right, one more example, guys. Okay, so here we have Cuba and Mexico. TVs and salsa is what they're making, and this is number of hours to make one. Is this an input or an output question? It is an input question. The time is different for both. So we're saying that it takes Cuba 4 hours to make one TV, and it takes Mexico 1 hour to make a TV. It takes Cuba 12 hours to make salsa, and Mexico 5 hours to make salsa. That is a really long time to make salsa. So we're saying input, going back to our chart, remember the first thing that we need to figure out is absolute advantage. So again, we're looking at the original numbers, and we're looking at the one that uses the fewest number of resources, or the smaller number. So Cuba takes them 4 hours to make a TV, and Mexico, it takes them 1 hour. So Mexico has absolute advantage in the production of TVs. And salsa, it takes Cuba 12 hours and Mexico 5 hours. So again, Mexico has absolute advantage in the production of salsa. And then we're going to go ahead and do the calculations to figure out our comparative advantage. Let me just set up the ratios. And just FYI, AP will ask sometimes for the ratios, so let me not make that look like a S, not a 5. So that's why I ask you guys to do this, because if you already did this, if you already created the chart, then that's just one less thing to have to do or have to worry about. Practice makes perfect. Oops. Sorry, y'all. I'm sure y'all didn't make the mistake, right? Okay. So let's do the comparative advantage. And remember that comparative advantage is the same for both the output and the input method. After calculations, the one with the lowest opportunity cost with the smaller number is what we're looking for, okay? So input equals other goes under IOU. So if we're looking at Cuba, other goes under, so it's 4 over 12. And we reduce, divided by 4 equals 1, divided by 4 equals 3. So for every one TV, Cuba gives up, making 1/3 of a salsa. And for Mexico, other goes under, so 1/5, and you don't have to reduce that. So for every one TV they make, they give up, making 1/5 of a salsa. For Cuba to make salsa, other goes under, so 12, and we reduce by 4, so that's 3 and 1, which is equal to 3. So for every one salsa, they give up making 3 TVs. Other goes under. So for every one salsa that they make, they give up making 5 TVs. So now again, we're looking for the lowest opportunity cost. So 1/5 is smaller than 1/3, so we know that Mexico has comparative advantage in the production of televisions. And for salsa, 3 is definitely smaller than 5, so we know that Cuba has comparative advantage in the production of TVs. So who should specialize in what? So because Mexico has comparative advantage, because their opportunity cost is lower, that is why they should focus on making televisions. And Cuba should focus on making salsa because their opportunity cost is smaller. I hope this helped, guys. Let me know if you have any questions. I'm here for tutoring. There's like a zillion YouTube videos out there. Hope this helps, guys. See you.